After 8 years in Orlando, I tragically lost my daughter. Discover the incredible journey to bring my grief to life through art. Sarah sat cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by a storm of Lily's toys, each one a silent reminder of the laughter that once filled their home. It had been 2 months since the accident, an inexplicable twist of fate that shattered her world. Memories of Lily flooded her thoughts, tearing at her heart. The way her eyes danced with joy and how they would paint rainbows together now felt like salt in a fresh wound. As she dug deeper into the box, she felt a strange mix of desperation and hope. Each painting whispered a secret of her past, reminding her of the creative spirit that ran through her family. The letter, yellowed with age, spoke of a legacy, a lineage of artists. But as Sarah read, doubt curled around her like a vice. Would she ever rise above the label of just a mother? Her mind raced with the fear of losing herself completely to this identity of grief and struggle. What if she stepped into the world of art and was met with the cold shoulder of judgment? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The brush slipped from her fingers as emotions tangled within her. The fear of failure loomed larger each day. Each stroke on the canvas was a direct confrontation with her past. Could her art encapsulate Lily's spirit, or would it merely echo her pain? Hunched over her easel, Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the onslaught of sorrow that threatened to drown her. What if her paintings were seen only as a reflection of a broken mother, rather than as a genuine exploration of loss? Sweat beaded on her forehead as the uncertainty clawed at her core. Amidst this chaos, whispers of imposter syndrome curled around her creativity like smoke. Each exhibition she contemplated felt like a public dissection, each viewer's gaze a potential dagger. She imagined the criticisms, the dismissiveness that could arise from being a single mom stepping into the daunting world of art. Could she breathe in a space dominated by narratives she felt excluded from? The thought made her stomach tighten. Every acceptance letter she hoped for felt simultaneously distant and improbable. Caught in a whirlwind of accomplishments and insecurities, just as a hopeful opportunity flickered in her mind, like a candle in the dark, Sarah received a call from a gallery. They wanted to showcase her work. Heart racing, she clutched the phone, but a paralyzing fear accompanied the thrill. Would they see beyond the tragic story of a grieving mother? Could her journey of pain transform into a narrative of resilience? What if the brightness of her paintings still felt marred by the shadows of loss? All these questions spun uncontrollably, tightening around her as she weighed her options, poised at the precipice of everything she dreamed about, or feared most. The gallery owner's voice crackled with excitement on the other end of the phone, but Sarah's heart pounded like a drum, drowning out the praise. "Your work is profound. We want to feature it in our upcoming exhibit," he said, his words swelling her chest with pride, even as they coiled tight with anxiety. Her fingers trembled as she hung up, the exhilaration eclipsed by a shadow of doubt. She paced her living room, feeling the weight of the toys strewn across the floor like reminders of what used to be. Could her art breathe life back into a space filled with the echoes of laughter? Or was it merely a tribute to her lingering grief? In her mind, apprehension twisted with ambition. This was her moment, a chance to reclaim her identity beyond the tragedy that had sculpted her for too long. Yet, each thought sparked a paralysis of indecision. What if the viewers only saw a broken mother, mired in sorrow, unable to navigate through her own pain? Every brushstroke now felt like a potential misstep on a canvas that demanded not just mourning, but rebirth. Resolute to avoid another day lost to self-doubt, Sarah delved into her work. She transformed her fears into colors and shapes, allowing her emotions to bleed onto the canvas. Each piece became an intimate exploration of loss and love, the swirling blues representing tears, the vibrant yellows echoing Lily's laughter. It felt like two worlds converging, the heaviness of her sorrow and the flickering light of hope. But as the exhibit approached, the temptations of doubt crept back. Her vision was vulnerable, poised to be judged in ways she might not be ready to confront. She recreating Lily's smiles, but what if they only reflected a mother's heartache, negating any semblance of artistry? In a burst of frustrated energy, she flung her brushes aside, dark thoughts wrestling within as she fumed at her inability to transcend her pain. "Why can't I just be proud?" she whispered to herself, seeking solace in the quiet shadows of her living room. What was it that held her back? Was it the fear of judgment, or something deeper, an inner voice that cautioned her against venturing into the limelight? The question danced in her mind, prickling at the edges of her consciousness. With a deep breath, she began crafting a plan. She would not allow her story to be reduced to mere tragedy. Instead, she would embody resilience. Though she sensed an overwhelming urge to run from the impending exhibit, she recognized that it was a critical juncture in her journey. Gathering her scattered courage, she decided to invite her closest friends and familiar faces to a private viewing. This was a test, an opportunity to stand before an audience and gauge their reactions, a stepping stone towards the wider display. Days turned into a blur as preparations consumed her. Each moment ignited fresh anxieties, but amidst the whirlwind, a sliver of determination emerged. She set about creating a piece that would encapsulate the duality of her grief and love, a final act of expression for Lily that stood as her own mark of transition from sorrow to celebration. As she assembled her work with painstaking care, visions of how it would all unfold flooded her mind. But just as excitement began to bubble within her, the haunting memory of the gallery owner's words lingered uncomfortably. The night before the private viewing, Sarah stood before her easel, brimming with a cocktail of fear and hope. Would she be able to transform that inner turmoil into something beautiful? Was it truly possible to rise above the title of just a mother and emerge as an artist rooted in life and depth? The choices became clearer. She could either allow her vulnerability to suffocate her or embrace it, harnessing the pain that shaped her as a source of strength. As dawn cast a warm glow over her messy studio, Sarah's breath steadied, igniting a fragile yet unwavering resolve. But as she added the final touches, a new question slithered into her mind. Was the world ready for the raw authenticity of her story? With every brushstroke, she knew the moment of truth awaited her. As she stepped back to take in her creation, she could almost hear the echoes of judgment whispering in the dark. The day of the private viewing dawned, heavy with anticipation and unease. Sarah awoke before the sun, the weight of her decision pressing upon her like a lead blanket. The quiet house felt charged, as if the walls themselves held their breath, waiting for the moment she would step into the world outside her cocoon of grief. In the hours leading up to the event, Sarah raced through her routine, coffee brewed strong and hot, the scent swirling memory-laden fogs of mornings long past, where laughter once echoed, where silence now smothered her spirit. She glanced at Lily's discarded toys, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the dimness that clung to her heart. This setting was a crucible for her transformation, a space where she could forge her identity anew. Stepping into her studio, the sight of her completed pieces met her eyes. Each canvas, at once tormenting and liberating, reflected her journey through anguish and resilience. Yet, doubts unfurled again in her mind, like blackened vines threatening to constrict her forward movement. What if her friends saw only a mother clinging to a memory instead of an artist bravely shaping her truths? A flicker of panic pulsed through her. She fought it back, reminding herself of the intent behind this showcase. As the clock ticked down, She navigated through her thoughts, confronting the threads of self-doubt that emotionally stitched themselves into her fabric. Were her connections genuine if they were founded upon an unwelcome sympathy? Was she courageous enough to reveal her innermost self, or was she simply inviting others to peer into her brokenness? This moment was precarious. It was a dance of vulnerability and fortitude. The doorbell rang, breaking the silence like a discordant note in her carefully crafted orchestra. Friends filtered into her home, bringing warmth and laughter that felt foreign after years of solitude. Each friendly face was a potential lifeline, yet their smiles bore the weight of her loss. Her heart raced as she mentally clutched the edges of her creations. As they mingled, her self-imposed barriers began to crumble. Surrounded by their shared memories of Lily, she felt a quiet shifting within her, a realization that she had not just been a broken shell, but a mosaic, each fractured piece gleaming with the beauty of life experienced to its fullest. These people were her witnesses, not her judges. When the moment arrived to showcase her work, Sarah took a deep breath. She stood before the collection, the group before her pulsating with curious energy. Every eye was on her, silently urging her to speak her truth. As she took the floor, she tasted the blend of fear and exhilaration, a cocktail she had not sipped in years. "This," she gestured to her artwork, "is where I've poured my grief, my love, my memories of Lily." The words rolled off her tongue with unexpected resonance. There it was, the articulation of everything she had battled for, an acknowledgement of loss that was not just sorrow, but a celebration of what had been. The air was thick with expectation. She addressed their questions, and with each reply, she unearthed layers of her emotions long buried. Confrontations with her own fears turned them into stepping stones. How often, she pondered, do we hide our complexities out of fear of exposing our vulnerabilities? A shared understanding rippled through the small crowd, sparking solidarity rather than pity. But as they reacted to her pieces, applause swelling around her, an unexpected realization struck. Was her journey not just about healing? Perhaps it was also a call for others to embrace authenticity, to recognize their own stories as integral to the human experience. In that moment, she acknowledged that vulnerability was not synonymous with weakness, but rather the birthplace of connection. The energy in the room shifted, filling her with a new determination. With every conversation about her work, she felt more whole, despite the fear lurking just beneath the surface. The lingering question of whether the world was ready for her honesty still tantalized, like a whisper beckoning her to dig even deeper. As the evening wound down and the laughter softened into a gentle hum, Sarah realized this was only the beginning of her journey. She had glimpsed her potential, but what lay beyond this moment? The answer evaded her, teasing her with the promise of uncharted paths. The desire for exploration bubbled within her, tethered by an inner urgency to unfold the layers she had yet to tackle. Perhaps there were stories yet untold that held the potential to resonate even further. Just as she began to contemplate her next move, a familiar face emerged from the crowd, eyes glinting with the same fire she now embraced. "What's next for your art, Sarah?" they asked. And in that moment, she felt the threads of potential weave into something more expansive than she'd ever dreamed. The question hung in the air, vibrant with possibility, hinting at the adventures of self-discovery and challenge yet to come. Sarah stood in the dimmed light of her studio, still enveloped by the echo of applause, the weight of the question hanging in the air like an unfinished sentence. What was next? Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the exhilaration of having revealed herself in such an earnest way. For the first time, she felt a rush of ambition fuse with the remnants of her grief. She turned away from her friends, who were now engaged in animated discussions about her work, and focused on the faces behind the canvases. Each piece told a story, a thread from the tapestry of loss she had so carefully woven. But they were not just echoes of sadness. They spoke of revolution, reclamation, and resilience. In depicting her journey, she had laid bare not just memories of Lily, but also the transformative power of sorrow. Ideas began to swirl in her mind like colors on a palette, illuminated by the sparks of inspiration from her friends' reflections. What if she created a new series, one that drew on the shared experiences of those around her? A collection that explored a broader narrative of loss and love, one that could connect with more than just her own grief? The thought was intoxicating, a blend of vulnerability and empowerment that propelled her instinctively towards growth. But with this newfound inspiration came a rush of anxiety, which threatened to grip her. Could she truly delve into the complexities and nuances of others' experiences while wielding her own as a brush? What if, in her attempt to broaden her narrative, she lost the authenticity that had characterized her initial work? Questions ignited like wildfire, and Sarah felt the pulse of doubt again, trying to snare her in a web of uncertainty. She had long avoided stepping beyond the boundaries of her emotions, nurturing her own pain rather than embracing the interconnectedness of grief. Standing among a crowd whose stories paralleled her pain, what if she reached out to them? What if they shared their narratives? In that moment, an idea emerged, luminous and fearless. Perhaps a collaborative art project could serve as a bridge, a canvas that invited participation. Each participant, bearing their unique stories, would contribute a piece to a collective narrative that echoed resilience. They would co-create, and in doing so, they would forge connections that transcended their individual experiences, a blending of voices into a harmonious chorus. Nervously, she stepped back towards the group, her resolve electrifying the air. "I want to create something together," she said, meeting their curious gazes. "A project where we can each contribute our stories and experiences through art. Something that encompasses the myriad of emotions we carry, not just my own." The initial surprise melted into intrigued chatter as her friends eagerly expressed their thoughts. Some were hesitant, unsure if they could share their deeper vulnerabilities. But the more Sarah explained her vision, painting the picture of a collaborative expression, the more she saw their fears mirror her own. The fear of not measuring up, the trepidation of exposing raw wounds for all to see. But this was not about perfection, this was about connection. Her heart surged with excitement, fueled by the possibility of creating a communal narrative that would surround and uplift them all. "Your stories matter. They are powerful, and they deserve to be seen and heard," she urged them, her voice steady. In her proposal, Sarah recognized a paradox. While she had feared the exposure of her own vulnerability, she now understood its necessity in encouraging others to face theirs. Each person in that room held the power to contribute to something larger than themselves, a project that would challenge boundaries, inspire healing, and serve as a declaration that no one had to bear their grief alone. As discussions intensified, she felt invincible, a stark contrast to the shadowy figure she had been weeks before. Each person's voice added depth, broadening the horizons of her artistic journey. The evening melded into a swirl of ideas, and by the end, she'd gathered commitment statements from those who wished to participate. As they shared tentative designs for their pieces, laughter and encouragement filled the space where silence had once reigned. However, amidst the warmth of connection, an unsettling thought gnawed at the edges of her consciousness. Could she truly capture the essence of another's experience? As Sarah lingered on this newfound horizon of collaborative creation, she also sensed a storm brewing within her. The challenge now was not merely artistic expression, but the profound responsibility of bearing another's story. What would happen if she stumbled? What if her voice overshadowed others, or worse, failed to pay homage to their truths? The question lurked beneath the jubilant atmosphere, and Sarah felt its weight pressing in as she stood at the precipice of a bold new venture. The moment was ripe with possibility, but looming just behind were doubts that could still shatter her ambitions. To confront them would require an even greater leap of faith. Would she embrace the complexities of this venture, or retreat into the safety of her own narrative? And as the thought settled into her mind, a familiar voice broke through her reverie. "Are you really ready for this, Sarah?" It was one of her friends, eyes glinting with challenge. The gravity of the question hung there, signaling the threshold of her next chapter, fraught with both peril and potential. Sarah remained momentarily paralyzed, the words echoing in her mind like a heartbeat. The challenge in her friend's voice stirred something deep within her. It ignited both fear and determination, a volatile mix, propelling her to confront the very core of her aspirations. Sarah could feel the weight of her mission pressing down on her chest, the air thickening around her. "Ready or not?" she muttered to herself, internalizing the question. It reverberated through her thoughts, questioning her ability to step beyond the safety of the familiar. Hadn't she always hidden behind the veil of her own grief? Now, thrust into the responsibility of not just telling her story, but intertwining it with the experiences of others, she sensed the boundary lines blurring. The exhilaration of embracing vulnerability hung heavy in the air. There was no turning back. She mustered a smile, meeting her friend's piercing gaze. I'm ready," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. But as the evening unfolded, each shared idea became a reminder of the magnitude of her task. The colorful sketches and tentative plans flowed from her friends' imaginations, revealing pieces of their hearts. A sense of urgency filled the space as stories of courage, loss, and resilience were unveiled. Yet amidst the vibrancy, Sarah grappled with her own doubts. She took a step back, positioning herself as an observer for a moment, soaking in the collective energy. Her hand absently traced the smooth surface of a canvas leaning against the wall, a blank slate. The canvas was perfect, reflecting her own internal landscape, unmarked yet full of potential. How ironic, she thought, to find herself both terrified and exhilarated by the blankness of a new journey. It was in these still moments that the magnitude of her vision pressed on her. The task of embodying the nuances of others' experiences was daunting. She envisioned the individual pieces merging into one cohesive narrative, yet fear clawed at her insides. Would she be able to do justice to the layers of emotions each participant carried? What if she failed to encapsulate the essence of another's story? Could she truly become a vessel through which their truths were distilled onto canvas without erasing their individuality? Time slipped away as the discussions continued. Fueled by enthusiasm, the group brainstormed and packed their suggestions with shared laughter, yet an undercurrent of tension bubbled within Sarah. She felt as if she were perched at the edge of a precipice, the vast, unknown yawning before her. The evening drew to a close, and as they prepared to leave, one friend stopped her, his tone serious. "You're sure you want to lead this project? What if it's harder than you think?" The sincerity in his voice echoed her own fears. What if you lose yourself trying to capture everyone else's? His concern echoed a truth she could no longer ignore. She was not merely taking a step into a new phase of her career. She was embarking on a venture that could redefine her entirely. The notion of being a facilitator instead of the sole creator unsettled her. Could she blend her vision with the authenticity of others without losing herself? Sarah felt a small voice rise from within, urging her to lean into the discomfort. The struggle was integral to growth. To flourish as an artist, she had to embrace the messiness of connection. This was about forging ties that resonated with lifetimes of experience, interweaving her narrative with the narratives of others. As her resolve began to crystallize, something else struck her. The potential for self-discovery nested within their collaboration. Each brushstroke, each shared moment, could potentially reveal deeper truths about herself. Perhaps, in facing the daunting responsibility she had summoned, she might uncover hidden aspects of her own artistic identity. As she stood in her studio alone, the night deepened and her mind raced with possibilities. Would she allow the tumultuous journey to unfold, or would she restrict herself to the familiar confines? The tension within her swirled like paint on a palette, waiting to be transformed into something beautiful, yet terrifying. And just then, the spark of challenge ignited anew as she made a decision. She would rendezvous with the participants the following week, not only to discuss ideas, but to deeply engage with their real stories. But could she summon the strength to sit face to face with pain, hers and theirs? The prospect weighed heavily on her mind as she locked the door to her studio. This time, there was more than her own narrative at stake. Embracing their stories meant unraveling her own heavily knitted fabric of grief. Would she be ready to unearth the threads of pain when confronted with the rawness of others? As the question hovered at the forefront of her thoughts, she felt a pulse of courage engineered by uncertainty. Tomorrow would begin her true confrontation, a crossing into a realm where she would navigate not only the art of storytelling, but the art of vulnerability intertwined with the shared grief of humanity. The moment now stood poised at the brink, anticipation thrumming through her. The journey had just begun, but where would it lead? The day arrived, crisp and overflowing with both trepidation and excitement. Sarah paced her studio, the rhythm of her footsteps echoing off the walls, mirroring the tumult within her. This was it, the moment of connection she had been both longing for and dreading. The clock ticked steadily, each passing second heightening her awareness of the fragile threshold she was about to cross. She took a deep, grounding breath, trying to steady the roiling emotions that churned in her chest. Today, she wouldn't just facilitate a project, she would invite others into the depths of their stories and, unknowingly, her own. Would she hold space for their trauma? Would she find the words and strokes to express something that felt larger than her? The participants began to arrive, each bringing a different hue of energy into the room. Sarah forced a smile as they exchanged introductions, their faces a tapestry of hope tinged by anxiety. She initiated a circle, inviting each person to share why they had come. As the stories unfolded, circling around family, lost friendships, and unfulfilled dreams, Sarah felt her own heartache ripple through each tale, resonating like a harmonious chord. Yet as she listened, she noticed the whispering doubts that had haunted her the night before creeping back in. Were these stories meant to be shared with someone still engulfed in her own grief? With trembling fingers, she unwrapped a small notebook, preparing to jot down significant moments. But as the ink flowed onto the page, she felt the weight of her past pressing against her resolve. A woman named Clara spoke, her voice laced with melancholy. "I lost my sister last year," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "I feel like I've lost a part of myself, too." Sarah's chest tightened, the weight of Clara's pain igniting a flash of recognition within her. The words she had written long ago, drowning in her own sorrow, echoed back. "I am not alone in this struggle." But how could she reconcile that realization with her own need for self-preservation? After a few more stories, Sarah finally took a breath. I understand loss intimately." The words slipped from her lips, unplanned. "My daughter, she's gone. It's almost as if I'm walking through life veiled." The group fell silent, and for a moment she felt the world dissolve, leaving only the raw vulnerability of shared grief. She could see it in their eyes, the flicker of empathy and understanding. From this shared exchange, something ignited within Sarah. She could be a vessel. The fear weighing on her began to shift to something more productive, a responsibility that connected them all. Grieving together didn't diminish her pain, it illuminated it, creating space for healing. She started to facilitate their storytelling with newfound vigor, her voice resonating with a steadiness that surprised her. People shared how they coped, dug into memories of their past, and revealed how their losses influenced their current lives. And with each story, Sarah felt the threads of her own experience weave into theirs. The canvas of her project transformed. It was no longer merely a blank slate, but a living tapestry of intertwined lives. As they worked through various exercises, Sarah urged them to explore the depths of their emotions fully, allowing the pain to surface and guide their creativity. With every heartfelt narrative shared, the room cultivated a breath of catharsis. The air crackled with the kind of energy that can only come from vulnerability and connection. Before long, they began experimenting with different mediums: paint, photographs, and text. Sarah observed their joy as they created, and in that moment, she realized something vital. This journey was not solely about storytelling. It was about reclaiming pieces of themselves, about healing together. But as the creative din swelled, another voice whispered a cautionary tale. Would this newfound tapestry veil the rawness of her own grief? The realization that she was still clutching her unresolved emotions hinted at an inevitable reckoning. The task at hand had become twofold: support them and unearth her own buried pain in the process. Sarah left the session energized, but acutely aware that she still stood at the brink of her own journey. With the workshop opening doors to collaborative healing, she knew she had much more to confront within herself. The unexpected intertwinement of their stories brought the revelation that they were all embarking on a collective path toward understanding loss. Yet, would they leave behind their pasts untouched, or would they dive into the intricacies of shared connections, facing their collective grief head-on? As she packed her belongings that evening, uncertainty swirled within her, propelling her toward an unresolved truth. Tomorrow would beckon them back, and with it, the challenge of unearthing her own vulnerability, risking exposure in front of them all. But could she muster the strength to truly own her grief in that space, revealing herself even further? The answer lingered like an echo in her mind as the sun dipped below the horizon, shrouding her studio in twilight. Sarah felt the first stirrings of dread mingling with resolve. This journey had only just begun, and in embracing the stories of others, she was destined to confront her own haunting past. Where would that confrontation take her? The next morning arrived with the golden light of dawn breaking through the streaks of clouds. Sarah rubbed the sleep from her eyes, but the weight of yesterday hung precariously in her mind. She had stepped into a shared vulnerability with her group, yet the depth of her own sorrow remained echoing in the shadows, refusing to retreat. As she prepared her studio, her thoughts spiraled back to the stories she had heard, each laden with pain and hope. She chose to decorate the space differently today. Drawing on the emotions shared, she arranged the chairs in a circle, but added small side tables to hold art supplies, inviting spontaneous creativity. As she worked, a sense of purpose began to anchor her restless spirit. This would be a day for exploration, not just of their grief, but of the healing potential that art could provide, a notion that both terrified and exhilarated her. When the participants arrived, the familiarity of their eyes was comforting, yet unnerving. Clara entered first, her tentative smile revealing both courage and fear. "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said yesterday," Clara confessed, glancing at Sarah. "That there's strength in sharing our stories." The affirmation sparked something in Sarah, igniting an ember of determination within her. She took a seat and gestured to everyone to settle in. "Today, let's create something that reflects our experiences," Sarah said, her tone steady, each word feeling like a promise to them and herself. "We'll use whatever medium speaks to you, be it paint, clay, or words." In the silence that followed, she silently pleaded with herself to be brave. Could she reveal her own grief through creativity? As the exercises began, Sarah watched as Clara and the others immersed themselves in their work. Colors splashed brightly across canvases, stories transformed into shapes and forms that resonated in the air. It invigorated Sarah to see them release their pain through artistic expression, but each stroke stirred up the turbulent emotions within her. She felt the sediment of her own grief rising, threatening to spill forth like an overfilled cup. Taking a deep breath, she retrieved her notebook and scribbled notes about how to encourage them. But as she wrote, she inadvertently penned a reminder to herself. "Confront your truth, Sarah." Just then, Clara's paintbrush paused. "What about you, Sarah? What are you creating?" Caught off guard, Sarah's heart raced. The question slithered through her defenses, exposing the raw vulnerability she'd hidden. She started, her mouth suddenly dry. Sarah realized she had to confront her own silence. Her past had to breathe. "I haven't figured it all out yet," she confessed, a tremor in her voice betraying the confidence she tried to uphold. "But I want to create something that honors my daughter." Their collective gaze held her in a silent embrace. Sarah sensed their understanding, the encouragement bubbling in the air like a potent elixir, urging her to dive in. She reached for the paints, her hands trembling slightly, and opened the small canvas destined to convey the unspeakable. Each color she laid down was an echo of her journey: blue for sorrow, yellow for fleeting joy, and red for the fierce love that had never dimmed despite the void left in her life. As she painted, the room formed into a cocoon of shared creativity, each member folding their experiences into the collective tapestry. Hours passed unnoticed as emotions bled into art. With each stroke, Sarah felt layers peel away, exposing not just her grief, but the vibrancy of her memories. Yet even as liberation crept in with every brush of paint, Sarah's inner voice continued to murmur doubts. Was her grief worthy of expression? What if it was too raw, too unsettling for others? Would her journey dampen their progress, or inspire it? These haunting questions lingered, writhing uncomfortably in her chest, weaving a thread of uncertainty through the threads of her painting. As they approached the end of the session, Sarah surveyed the artwork around her. The transformation of pain into beauty left her breathless. Emotions swirled violently within her, both pride for her and the group's creations, and fear of what might come when the masks they had worn began to slip. Finally, as the closing moments drew near, she caught Clara's eye, who nodded toward her canvas. "I think what you're doing is brave, Sarah. We all need to see it." In that moment, an unfamiliar resolve flickered to life within her. Perhaps sharing her pain would not just be an act of vulnerability, but a beacon of strength. The layer of uncertainty that encased her courage slowly began to unravel. But as she prepared to open up more, she felt the looming question at the edges of her consciousness. Would the act of revealing her heart's wounds to these empathetic souls lead to her own healing? Or would it risk shattering the fragile connections they had formed? The floor beneath her felt like shifting sand, threatening to swallow her whole at any moment. Yet she knew. A choice loomed ahead, one that could either clear her path or further entrap her within her sorrow. Tomorrow, clarity would demand to be faced. How far would she be willing to go? And would she lay bare the very things that terrified her most? The first rays of light poured in through the window, casting a warm glow over Sarah's studio. It felt like a fresh start, yet the weight of yesterday lingered, a tension that couldn't easily dissolve. Sitting at her easel, she stared at the half-finished canvas that now bore witness to her struggle, a reflection of her grief, an unfinished story yearning for resolution. Determined to channel her pain into productivity, Sarah set a new intention for the day. Today wouldn't just be about painting, it would be about unearthing the truths hidden deep within her. She opened her notebook, noting down everything she felt, as if to peel back the layers that suffocated her spirit. "What does honoring my daughter really mean?" she scribbled, along with queries that plagued her. Questions ignited a fire of curiosity, but were also daunting in their implications. As the participants began to arrive, Sarah sensed their energy was mixed with anticipation and uncertainty, similar to her own. Clara was the first to walk in, her colorful paint-stained shirt a visible testament to her commitment to the process. She approached Sarah with an inquisitive look. "How was your night? Did you work on your piece?" "I did some writing," Sarah replied, her voice lacking assurance. "It's still a lot to process." Clara nodded understandingly, picking up her brush and directing her focus back to the canvas. Seeing Clara throw herself into the artwork generated a flicker of resolve in Sarah. Refocusing her thoughts, she remembered the fragile bond they were beginning to forge, a connection through shared grief. Time passed in bursts of creativity, laughter, and the occasional pointed silence. Sarah observed as the group scribbled, painted, and molded their feelings into tangible forms. She wanted to join them, to let the colors consume her. Feeling the familiar pull of doubt, she hesitated. Each stroke made her question the significance of her pain. What if my story is too much for them? The thought gnawed at her like a persistent itch. Finally, she could feel her pulse quickening. What lay beneath her skin needed to be articulately embraced, not just hidden behind closed lips. It wasn't about presenting her grief in a palatable manner. It was about the authenticity of her experience. Sarah wrestled with the notion for every minute that passed, prompting her to take a leap of faith. As the session drew to a close, Sarah felt an urgency to share something significant before the day slipped away. The participants gathered, expecting to showcase their art. Sarah's throat tightened. Clara's eyes pinned her with encouragement, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. "I want to show you something," Sarah said, her voice trembling yet determined. The room softened, all eyes on her. "This piece represents my journey through loss. It's not easy, but it's real." With a deep breath, she unveiled her canvas, revealing strokes and shades that told the story of love eclipsed by sorrow, a sun half hidden behind storm clouds. "This is my daughter," she said as tears brimmed in her eyes. "And every color, every line embodies what I've gone through in processing her absence." An electric charge coursed through the room. Silence held them all captive as attendees processed her revelation. Clara stepped forward, eyes glistening. "It's beautiful, Sarah. Thank you for trusting us with this." Sarah's heart raced. Did sharing her grief distance her from the group or draw them closer? A flood of emotions warred inside her, relief at unveiling her truth, but dread at how it might change their dynamic. She felt a remarkable shift within herself. The act of vulnerability, once terrifying, began to morph into empowerment. The community forged in the room through shared stories was now stronger. Yet, lingering questions still shadowed her heart. Could she truly find healing through the act of unveiling her story, or would she feel further adrift with this confession? The atmosphere was charged, hearts open, yet Sarah stood on the brink of another crucial decision. While the initial step of sharing her art had propelled her forward, the deeper excavation into her emotional landscape awaited. As she steadied her breath, her mind raced with new questions. What else was buried beneath the surface? And was she ready to confront whatever horrors or healing lay ahead? Just as she braced herself to dive deeper, a knock echoed through the studio, ripping her focus away. Who could it be? There was an unmistakable urgency to that knock, a tickling sense that it might change everything. The knock shattered the silence, reverberating through the studio with an unexpected force. Sarah's heart raced, her thoughts spinning wildly. She wasn't ready for more interruptions. Her resolve had finally begun to solidify, and now this uncertainty knocked at the door, demanding to be answered. With hesitant steps, she approached the door, her hand hovering over the handle. What awaited her behind it? Deep inside, she suspected it could be something both illuminating and frightening, perhaps a chance encounter that might mar her burgeoning sense of empowerment. As she pulled the door open, a gust of cool air filled the room. Standing there was a man, weathered yet striking, with eyes that mirrored an understanding only born from shared suffering. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, a calming yet heavy air about him. "My name is Daniel. He paused, glancing over her shoulder at the assembly of diluted emotions and drying brushes. "I heard about your open studio and felt compelled to come." Sarah's initial shock gave way to an odd sense of familiarity. "You've come to paint?" she asked, skeptical yet intrigued. Daniel shook his head. No, I come to learn, to understand. My daughter passed a year ago. His words flew through the air like arrows, piercing the protective bubble Sarah had momentarily encased herself in. Empathy surged within her, but it was laced with dread. Sharing a space with someone so intimately acquainted with her pain felt simultaneously generous and intimidating. I'm sorry, she managed, her voice barely a whisper as the gravity of shared grief swirled around them. I'm working through my own journey, he explained, taking a step into the room, his face etched in sincerity. But I feel isolated, even in a room full of people. I wanted to connect with someone who understands. Daniel's presence shifted the dynamics instantly. Sarah felt the pull of their shared experiences creating a bridge, her apprehension mingling with an unsettling sense of responsibility. What if she opened herself up yet again, only to find herself feeling however the flames of his pain ignited her own? Can I share something? He asked in gentle tones, surprisingly soft yet sure. She nodded, motioning for him to continue. He shared his struggles with vulnerability, regret, and uncertainty, the same fears that had haunted her for months. I often wonder if voicing my grief will push others away, but I realize that silence is equally isolating. Each word felt like a reflection of her own thoughts, a mirror to the shadows she'd tried to articulate. As he spoke, Sarah sensed an internal conflict strengthening. Daniel's honesty fueled the resolve she had begun to build throughout the day. Here was an opportunity, an invitation to forge a deeper connection, to further explore the art of vulnerability she had so recently begun to embrace. I've found that painting offers me both solace and confrontation, she said, her voice becoming more assured as she grasped the weight of her own realization. It's my way of honoring my daughter without hiding from the truth of my loss. Daniel nodded, visibly touched. Art offers a voice when words fail us. We are storytellers in our own right. With every exchange, Sarah felt the grip of doubt loosening. Maybe confronting her fears alongside someone who understood the landscape of her sorrow was less daunting than she had believed. Why not gather strength from their similarities rather than shying away from them? Would you join our group? She asked quietly, emboldened by their connection. We could create together. Perhaps we can find a shared language through our art. An unmistakable flicker of hope ignited in Daniel's eyes. I'd like that, he said, an exchange of courage passing between them. In that moment, Sarah realized that the act of opening her studio had transcended mere artistry. It was now an avenue of healing, a space not only for her own exploration, but a chance for others to share their burdens too. As she turned her gaze back into the studio, clarity enveloped her. But the questions remained. How deep could their collective healing go? What further transformations awaited as they navigated this journey together? When a tone rattled sharp through the room, it became clear that this was just the beginning. The implications of their connection echoed through her, drawing them both closer to a revelation neither had anticipated. A revelation waiting to break through the surface like the dawn after a long night. But even as the light began to penetrate the shadows, she felt the weight of another decision pressing upon her. Would she be ready to embrace what lay ahead when they ventured into the unknown? Would their joint exploration push them deeper into the abyss of their grief, or guide them towards liberation? Eager anticipation ignited within her, and just as quickly, doubt wove itself between her thoughts. What awaited her as they dared to uncover their own truths together? As the workshop continued, an electric energy enveloped Sarah and her participants. With Daniel now part of the group, the dynamic shifted even further. Everyone embodied an eagerness to explore their collective grief, unearthing stories rich with pain, yet threaded with a burgeoning sense of community. It was a sanctuary where vulnerability became synonymous with strength. Sarah felt reinvigorated as they ventured deeper into the exploration of their emotions through art. Conversations flowed freely, crimes of isolation transformed into catharsis, and insecurities transmuted into vibrant expressions on canvas. Together they shared laughter, tears, and unexpected breakthroughs as they layered their fears into colorful strokes or carved their narratives into clay. Sarah's own piece evolved dynamically. It had morphed from an embodiment of mere sorrow into a celebration of resilience. Vibrant yellows now danced alongside deep blues, illustrating an unwavering connection to Lily's memories interwoven with her healing journey. Each brushstroke reflected not just loss, but also a stubborn flicker of hope and ambition. Her spirit swelled as she realized that confronting her grief publicly was not about exposing her vulnerabilities to scrutiny, but rather a powerful act of reclaiming her narrative. One evening, as the group continued their work, Sarah noticed Clara struggling with her piece. The flicker of frustration in her eyes echoed the uncertainties Sarah had faced in her own journey. Recognizing the silent cry for help, Sarah took a step closer. "What's holding you back?" she asked gently. "It's as if I'm scared to let the pain out, scared that it might swallow me whole," Clara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah felt an unexpected surge of clarity. What if we intentionally embrace the pain? What if we create not just from our joy, but from our sorrow? This idea took root in her mind, a radical shift in perspective. It was in those spaces of discomfort that true creativity thrived. They could forge beauty from their pain, transforming every fear into a work of art. The air crackled with realization as Clara nodded slowly, and soon the entire group joined in. Together, they decided to create pieces that depicted their most profound hurts. This intentional act of confrontation turned the studio into a formidable landscape of exploration, each member delving into their memories with a sense of purpose. As laughter blended with tears, Sarah felt the full weight of her transformation begin to settle within her. She saw Daniel channeling his grief into expansive strokes of red and purple on his canvas, crafting a depiction of a close bond unbroken by loss. The shift among the participants was profound. The fear of vulnerability morphed into collective strength, and each brushstroke resonated with the unyielding courage to face their realities. With the project nearing completion, the prospect of showcasing their work grew ever closer. A local gallery had expressed interest, and the anticipation felt electric. This exhibition was not just about sharing their art, but about sharing their journey, each story imbued with love and resilience that illuminated the dark corners of grief. In the final days leading up to the exhibition, Sarah felt a stirring within her. It was a culmination of her personal journey, and deep-rooted fear began to claw at her edges. Would people see them as mere victims of grief? Would their raw emotions resonate, or would the outside world reject their vulnerabilities? Despite the creeping anxiety, standing on the threshold of such an impactful moment felt exhilarating. She gathered her group, sharing her feelings of uncertainty, and together they embraced the discomfort of vulnerability. "Let's remember why we painted these pieces," she reminded them. "These are not just expressions of sorrow. They are symbols of our healing, each one a testament to our strength in confronting our pain and transforming it into something beautiful." As they prepared for the exhibition night, Sarah felt an unwavering commitment to her desire to transcend mere tragedy. She was an artist. She had proven her competence not only to others but crucially to herself. On the night of the exhibit, the gallery transformed into a glow of warmth and connection, buzzing with a fervor that encapsulated their adventures. Guests turned up, faces alight with curiosity and compassion, and it felt like a celebration of self-acceptance and growth. As attendees moved through the gallery, viewing the vibrant expressions of shared experiences, Sarah felt a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Each person who stepped up to converse with her or other participants seemed to acknowledge the courage it took to bare their souls. It was recognition that resonated deeply within her. At that moment, Sarah understood the full extent of her transformation. She was not merely a grieving mother, but an artist who had confronted the darkness of loss head-on, allowing it to become her muse. She found solid confidence in being seen, recognized for how far she had come, not merely through failure or pain, but through a rich tapestry of shared stories and collective resilience. As the evening unfurled, laughter and voices curled around them like soft blankets, echoing an unspoken connection among the artists and guests alike. Surrounded by the legacy of healing and vulnerability, Sarah felt profoundly accomplished, her heart swelling with pride for all she had achieved. This was her moment, not just a conclusion, but a prologue to new beginnings. She had conquered her fears, transformed her grief, and established her position as both an artist and a storyteller. The journey was far from over. It had only just begun. Where would it lead next? What new stories awaited? This turning point ushered in a new chapter, a space where Sarah could embrace not only her own narrative, but also nurture the myriad of stories around her. And as she stood amid the soft glow of the gallery, one thought surged above all else. The doors of possibility were flung wide open. Art had indeed saved her, guiding her through grief to a space of empowerment. Now emerged the calling. Her journey into the wider world of creativity is just starting to unfold. Sarah felt exhilaration wash over her like a tidal wave, rich in opportunity. Navigating her newfound path was her next exhilarating adventure. Through it, she would continue to share beauty, courage, and love transformed from pain. Embrace your own journey and share the strength. After all, the world thrives on authenticity. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Join the conversation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.